Okay, guys, so the purpose of this video today is to go over the owl pellet and how that works and can be included in the AP Environmental Science course. So here I am on the AP Central page for the Environmental Science course, and you'll see here I have the CED, so I've clicked on that and I've opened it. And so here's our CED, which shows the different topics and course outline that you need for the AP Environmental Science course. And we're going to be looking at Unit 1 right now, and we're going to see where owl pellets fall in. So as you can see, College Board has it nice and organized. It tells you where you're going to do this, where you're going to cover these topics, and how much time. And of course, it shows the entire course page for the Unit 1 and the Unit at a glance. Now, for owl pellets, we're going to be looking at topics 1.9, 1.10, and 1.11. And the skills are going to be explain environmental concepts and processes, calculate a numeric answer with appropriate units, and of course, describing characteristics of that concept or process and representing it visually. So the lab we're going to go over today is a really useful lab, and it is able to cover all of these at once. So now, the document I have shared with you is this one, comes from NMSI, National Math and Science Initiative. This is a really great lab. It was originally designed for AP Biology, but the good thing is with the course redesign for AP Environmental, it actually plays pretty well into our topics. And many of these words, explain, predict, justify, apply, using visual representations, all of those apply to apes as well as biology. Okay. Now, if you've never done an owl pellet dissection before, the big question is, how can you quantify energy through ecosystems? So if your students have likely seen some form of um, some form of an owl pellet, maybe in junior high or middle school, maybe in ninth grade biology. So what we're trying to do with this is we're trying to scale it up so that it applies to our CED. So it now applies to this portion of the course where they'll be able to look at trophic levels, energy flow, and food chains and food webs. So this document, as I mentioned, it gives a little bit of background about owls, the barn owl, which is where people mostly get these owl pellets from. And I'll show you a little bit of the supplies we need in a minute. But it's a nice little overview of what happens. So basically, the owl cannot consume every part of the prey. So they end up kind of forming a pellet inside, and then occasionally they have to eject the pellet, probably two per day. Um, and then they're able to consume more. But there's hair, bones, parts of other animals, like beaks if they eat birds, that they cannot consume. So this is going to be their chance to do that. And so what the students will get to do is they're going to be able to answer the questions of what prey animals are available, how diverse is the community. Undo that. And so, it's something that they'll be able to kind of answer the whole way. So highlight the whole thing actually. And so that's something that many students will be able to see. And so there's many different questions, but typically these come from barn owls. And again, these are safe. These are pretty safe for students. I've had many years where I've had students that are brave enough and smart enough not to get their hands dirty, and they don't need gloves, but it is something that's useful. And so very basic equipment you'll need for this lab are a bone identification chart. So I have attached a file as well, so you can see a little bit about the different types of bones that a owl may have in its pellet. So these are very simple and basic. Some of these, if you go through Ward's or Carolina, they'll provide a dichotomous key for you. Um, I don't. We don't need to get that in depth in AP Environmental Science, so there is no dichotomous key. I just have this bone pellet chart. So, and again, if you want to look online through Google or any other image sourcing, it's really easy to find better images of this stuff. Okay, and then of course you can always extend this and have the students build a skeleton of whatever animal they could find inside. And I like this too because it's generally set to rodent, right? So we don't know if it's a mouse or a rat. And again, that just depends on sizes, so we're not too worried about that. Okay. And then some of the resources you're going to need are pretty simple. So you will need a balance, an electronic balance. You will also need, of course, some sort of a paper plate or dissection tray. Forceps are usually pretty good. And then, of course, your owl pellet. And you can see your owl pellet is not very heavy. It's not big. Depending on what the animal ate, you can do easily two of these per group, depending on the size of your group, as well as the amount of owl pellets you have. Usually, if you order them through Wards or Carolina, you will be able to get large packs of about 50 or 100 owl pellets at a time. So if you are able to continue ordering them every year, that's an easy thing to do. And then, of course, a ruler. I did not get a ruler with the metric system, but I am promoting the Clean Water Act in this one. So that one does have it in inches, so I would prefer and mention a metric ruler. But easy lab, doesn't need too much equipment. And then it goes to the procedure. You would then open up the pellet. You'll then start to separate the hairs from the bones, but make sure that your students measure this. And I really like this lab because it does have it set up where it's got perfectly done tables that the kids can just fill out. And it does have its own dichotomous key. So if you would like your students to practice that, you can. Like I mentioned, am not too much of a stickler on that, and it's not something they'll need for their AP exam. Okay, and so they can then figure out whether it's a mouse, a mole, a shrew, a rat, or a bird, and then fill out the table. So they need to measure the pellet length, the width, and the pellet mass. Okay, and then they need to figure out the numbers. So this one is just going to be a table of numbers. How many were there? And then they multiply it by 2 to figure out, because most owls do release 2 pellets per day. And then 365 days in a year, and then you can see how much did this one owl consume. And this is going to be important for some of the later things that you're going to do, because now you have the number of prey per year, and you can multiply that in their average mass. Okay, so if your students think the animal was a rat or a mouse, they can multiply that per year and then figure out the mass of producers. This is a generalized amount of mass of producers in, I believe, grams. And then they can then figure out the biomass of those producers. So this is a ratio that's done in kilograms, I'm sorry, not grams. And then they can use that biomass and then design a pyramid of numbers. So there's that visualization. So they're able to make a pyramid of numbers. And what this is going to show is it's going to give them a clear view of the 10% rule. You're going to be able to, students will be able to see that as the base gets wider, they need more biomass at the bottom. And then, of course, the owl is going to be much less biomass. And you'll be able to see how that is done. So that's a great way to do it, of numbers, excuse me. And then they'll do the biomass one as well with the second table. So they'll be able to construct that by using the data and the math. And I used to not like this document as much because the AP environmental exam did not have numbers like this, right? Masses, these are very small decimals. And the exam before the redesign, it had whole numbers because kids did not need a calculator. Well, now with the use of a calculator, the numbers and math that can be done in these tables apply very well to the AP exam. That's why. So even though this says AP biology, it's a very easy thing to do. And then to extend it to our last topic, topic 1.11, they can then draw the food web using the information given. Because if you look at the table, they can then figure out, how much of the owl was around, how much producers were consumed, and then use that to build their own food web. And of course, you can always have kids do research and figure out more. And at the top, of course, there's some description of what they eat and kind of a little bit about their food web and food chain as well. So that's something that they can use, as well as outside resources. And then finally, at the end, it's got really good summary questions where it will have information, or it'll have bolded portions of the information in the questions very similar to a free response question. And again, it also relates to the first law of thermodynamics, which is our big idea of energy exchange. So, and then of course there's provide evidence, which I would say is very akin to make a claim and with evidence. So students can use that as well. So that's something that I think that is a really good activity. If you can afford to get the owl pellets. Now, what I would also recommend is, let's say owl pellets are not something that are common around your area. You could also try doing this with an albatross bolus, which is very similar. So the only thing is you might have to make some adjustments to the document when you print it out. Obviously, this won't apply to the bolus for the albatross, but it's still something that you can use. And and like I tell most of my teachers and other students, the numbers here are not super set in stone. So if you have an issue with using these ratios of producers and mass for all these different ones, that's fine as long as they're able to make the practice and apply the stuff at the end. If they can do that visually and mathematically, then they will have the skills needed to be successful on the AP exam. So um, that's kind of a brief overview. I wanted to show that to you guys, let you know what that looks like. So hopefully that was helpful.